There was a lot of wrestling. You watched like 27 hours straight or something
I don't
when
want to
a
know
few
how
weeks
many
ago.
hours. I don't want to know how many hours of wrestling that I watch in a week. That would concern me.
Mm.
Like if you ever get those notifications about what your screen time was all last week, like I have a similar reaction. I was like, oh, I've chosen poorly with how I spend my time.
I was thinking yours didn't have any. It was like zero. You didn't use me at all this day. What was wrong with you?
Oh.
And you're like, I was watching wrestling. Phone. Stop judging me, phone.
Well, I watched wrestling from a different perspective this week though, because this is the well, it's actually the second time we've sat down to
Mm.
record this podcast, but it's the
We may
first
even
time I
finish
believe
it this
where
time.
we may even do it successfully this time.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea was, okay, we're gonna watch wrestling how we how we ever watch wrestling. Um, and we're just going to pick out what are like just what is the good stuff. Never mind the bad stuff.
Oh.
Don't focus on the bad stuff. There's plenty of that. But when there's so much wrestling on TV now, you don't even have to watch the stuff that you don't like. You can just fast forward that or just not watch that show and just focus on the shows that you do like, or fast forward to like fast forward through the Miz
Hold
and
on.
you know, yes.
Hold on here. Are you telling me that I can watch and enjoy something and watch and enjoy it?
Yeah.
I don't have to immediately register some weird disgust with a point of order that's probably highly, highly debatable to begin with.
You don't have to hate the thing you like.
Good God, man.
I know. And it seems like every fandom in all of entertainment has forgotten this. Like
Mm.
if you go on, I don't know if you've ever gone on the Star Wars Reddit,
Oh,
but
I've spent deep, deep amounts of
oh,
time embedded in various fandoms. Yes.
a lot of hate. And
Mm-hmm.
what should be uniting people in their love or just like of something seems to be dividing them,
Mm-hmm.
causing a lot of hate. And I think it's that people go into like you go into a Star Wars movie and you have expectations of what you feel Star Wars is.
Mm-hmm.
And so if what you're watching doesn't fit with your vision of Star Wars, then it's terrible and you hate it.
Yes.
And the trick is to not go into things with expectations. And this is actually like a trick in life too. Like if you like when dealing with people, if you always expect people to let you down,
Mhm.
occasionally they will surprise you and not let you down, and you'll
This is
focus more on that.
And the next thing
But
you know, two people don't let you down. And then three
uh-huh,
people. And the next thing you know, you're like, hey, people are
the
okay.
world's all right,
Yeah.
you know, or at least I'm hoping that's well, anyway.
Yes. It's a much maligned aspect of fandom. My father is a great example of this, in that my
Mm-hmm.
father has been a dedicated, diehard fan of the ice hockey club known as the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah.
Um, for his entire life. And the man is he's over 70 now. He's lived his entire life. And I know he is a dedicated hardcore fan because in my 40 years on the planet, I've heard him say like three good things about them. So that's pretty high praise.
Now, in the case of the Toronto Maple Leafs, though, as I'm sure Christian Cage would
Mm,
attest, um, there's lots of things to hate. You know,
sure.
not having won a Stanley Cup in over 50 years, kind of hate that.
Look,
You know,
I also haven't won a Stanley Cup in 50 years. Are you really going to hold the Toronto Maple Leafs to the standards of a guy like me?
fair enough.
Yeah. But I like what you were saying there about
Mm.
expectation and about watching things that you love just for the things that you love. And I know one thing that you always send me a text about right away is Collision. I dare say you
Yeah,
love AEW Collision.
I do. It's my favorite show right now. It's my favorite wrestling show
Oh,
because,
doesn't
like,
beat out the Mandalorian.
well, I wouldn't. Well, I mean, aside from
Ooh,
having a Mercedes Monet on the show a little bit, there's not a lot of wrestling in the
crossover.
Mandalorian.
Yeah,
But
true.
that's another thing. Like, okay, so like AEW Collision, a lot of people like it because it's got a more old school approach. So you've got that vision of what pro wrestling is. You've
Mm-hmm,
got WWE's larger than life, almost cartoonish approach to what
mm-hmm.
wrestling is. You've got AEW Dynamite, which is like the elite's approach to wrestling, which is sort of the big independent kind
Definitely
of
about spectacle.
yeah, exactly. So with what some people would call flippy matches, but are just really good athletic displays. So you've got all this variety in wrestling right now. You don't have to watch the stuff that you don't like. And you just have to watch the stuff that you do like. So I found watching wrestling this week with an eye for, I'm just going to focus on the stuff that I do like, was a great way to watch wrestling. It made it way more fun.
And
I figured this is probably the case for all sorts of fandoms. If you go into a Star Wars movie going, okay, this might not be exactly my vision for Star Wars, but you know what? Like Dave Filoni, this is his vision for Star Wars. So why does Dave Filoni think this is a great movie? Let's focus on that. Like what are the aspects of this Star Wars film that Dave Filoni went, this is awesome Star Wars content. And then you're just focusing on the positives rather than the negatives. And that makes your life better.
Yeah. And even, while viewing it, because we are now trained in the media consumption world we live in to look for things in everything, like look for Easter eggs, look for continuity things, look for errors, look for this. There's a sick satisfaction in, I think, a lot of wrestling fans when they see someone botch a move, thinking they're like, oh, I know that you didn't do that right. It's almost like a little bit of joy at having the inside baseball to notice stuff like that.
Yeah.
But here's another thing. You don't have to.
Right.
You can just go, oh, that looked like it hurt, and then move on. And when you look at that, at wrestling, particularly through that kind of lens, because let's be honest, even at wrestling's best, there are still probably one or two matches on the card that you're like, I can get a drink now,
Yeah.
And it's because when a show or a pay-per-view or something happens that is great start to finish, it's like, mind blowing. So I would look at that card and be like, 5 of those 9 matches were really, really good. So that was a really good show.
Yeah. And if you're just sitting,
focus on the positive.
And if you're just sitting at home and you're watching it on your PVR or whatever, you can just fast forward through the stuff that you don't like to get to the stuff that you do like. If you have one of those 10-second clickers, that's really the best way to watch wrestling, especially WWE, when it's 90% replays, recaps of things you've already seen, replays of things you just saw. You can just fast forward.
The newest innovations in M&M's technology.
Yeah, you can get through Raw in like an hour.
Easy.
If you just go through the stuff that isn't good.
Which is an interesting observation, and so true observation.
So this is where watching wrestling with a different mentality this week really came into focus for me, because this version of Seth Rollins that we're seeing with the over the top dressing and the laughing,
stylish wrestler ever.
It's not my favorite version of Seth Rollins, right? Like I prefer Seth Rollins when he's just Seth Rollins, the really good wrestler, and he'll have good wrestling matches. But yeah, I'm Seth Rollins. I'm going to have a wrestling match. It'll be a good one.
I say he just walks to the ring and says, I'm married to Becky, and then leaves. That's all I really need him to admit.
Did you guys know that?
You win.
Okay.
Bye.
But this version of Seth Rollins, like, he's doing everything to be a larger than life character. And so I think I was watching it with an eye going like, this is like him desperately trying to be an over the top character to get over. But if you're watching it from the perspective of, say, like a young wrestling fan who, isn't thinking about, well, what is Seth Rollins, the person, trying to do with this character? You're just watching the show in the same way that you would watch any other TV show. I think it's those fans that have really gotten behind Seth Rollins. And that's why this version of him, even though a lot of fans are like, I don't like this, so many fans are into it that he's as popular now as I think he's ever been in his career. So watching it with an eye for, okay, why do people like Seth Rollins, as opposed to watching it with just the bias that, okay, I think he's trying too hard, makes me appreciate it better.
I had a friend once who, as an experiment, decided he was going to watch 1 month of wrestling and believe everything they wanted him to believe.
Yeah.
So if they want him to believe that that's a good guy, then that's a good guy. If they want him to believe that that guy's going to the local medical facility in an ambulance, then that's what's happening. And he said that it was actually exhausting.
Really?
Yeah. Because he said he became so invested in everything that he just couldn't handle it. So,
oh, man.
I bring that up.
He had to like walk away. Somebody got stretchered off, and I can't even call anybody to inquire how they're doing because it's not a hospital. It's just a medical facility.
It might not even be open.
That's yeah.
Yeah. But I bring it up because it speaks to authenticity, right? And it's so easy for a guy like Seth Rollins, who everything Seth Rollins does, he pushes 1,000%.
Right.
Like he gives his all to it. And if he's trying to be over the top while being over the top already, that's going to take him into an area where it's just, it comes across as a little inauthentic. And, you don't really believe it. And you're doing what you said, where you're saying like, oh yeah, he's just doing that to rile up the crowd. And, it's kind of like there's a point in every wrestling fan's life, like long-term wrestling fan, where they're watching a match and they start realizing that they're clocking the next move.
Yeah.
Before it happens. It's like after a while, you just get to see how the sausage is made enough that you're like, I can't even unsee it now. So
yeah. But like just flipping your perspective like that, like watching it how they want you to see it. And I like when I have gone to WWE events with my nieces or nephews, they watch it like it's real. I think they kind of understand that it's a show, but they watch it like it's real. And that totally caused me to flip how I watch it a little bit, and I found like being there in the audience, it was more fun to really want Seth Rollins to win because that lousy Finn Balor cheated, and and I actually like, I really like watching wrestling like that. Like maybe it would be exhausting if I did develop like real empathy for the characters, like especially, if like, Bray Wyatt gets set on fire. It's like, oh, geez, if that's a real person, I'm traumatized.
I am concerned. I don't know if this Firefly Funhouse is going to last. But yeah, I had a similar experience watching Royal Rumble with my 8-year-old.
Oh yeah.
And she was just blown away. Like, why did that guy do that? And he's not supposed to do that. And he's cheating. And I'm like, he is cheating, isn't he? That's right. Because sometimes you kind of forget that stuff. You get caught up in the pageantry of it all. And you're like, oh, right. This is supposed to be a sport. And there are rules to the sport. And, you can like view it through that lens. It's changing your perspective is the way to go, man.
Yeah, I remember my nephew like rolled his eyes once at the ref doing a bad job. And I thought that was so funny. Like,
I don't think this guy's credentials check out at all.
Like, imagine how frustrated you would be with wrestling refereeing if you believed everything. You'd be like, God, this is who do we talk to about getting like, why is there not instant replay in this sport?
Someone called the police. That man has a chain wrapped around his hand and is punching people in the face. This is clear assault with deadly weapons. While you were watching through this new lens, this new headspace, did you happen to catch the announcement that at SummerSlam?
Oh yeah.
Which seems to be happening really early this year. Is that just me or no?
It's August 5th. I think sometimes it's at the end of August, but I don't know.
They announced that the Jey Uso Roman Reigns match will be a tribal combat match. And I got to tell you,
awesome.
I don't know what it is, but I'm here for it.
Sounds great. I'm kind of hoping like like in my head, the rules are it's the first one to put on that red necklace thing, that the chief
The lay.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could be that.
A lay on a pole.
It's probably like most WWE matches where there's just no rules, but you've given it a special name.
Yeah.
You know, like it's the we're gonna have a Toronto street fight. So what are the rules of a Toronto street fight? Any street fight or no DQ match, same thing.
Just it's in Toronto, I think.
Yeah.
Are we in Toronto?
Yeah.
Like, okay, Toronto. Yeah. Well, I mean, as long the only one that ever really bit me, to be honest, was the Punjabi prison match. Where, you know, I fell for that hard. I was like, oh, that sounds so deadly. Like, I think it'd be like spikes around the ring. Like, is there gonna be guys in bell towers, like with rifles? You know, like what Punjabi prison? How does this work? And then we found out it was just a bunch of like tiki torches taped together.
Yeah.
And but this
it's like the Kennel from Hell match sounded awesome.
Oh yeah,
like you're gonna have wild guard dogs outside of the, you know, it sounded great.
And here's why I didn't go to the Kennel from Hell match, because even though it was probably one of the most spectacular failures, not just in gimmick matches, but in wrestling in general, it was still astonishing to watch. You know what I mean? Like, in a few years, we old timers are going to be like, you know, I saw the Kennel from Hell match. I was there, you know. Like
I saw one of the dogs hump the other dog, and I thought, well, this is a disaster.
Then the other one took a big shit, and it was great. But yeah, no. So when they're like tribal combat, like this could be some kind of like, you know, Samoan pit fighting or something, or it could be, you know, like winner will be the tribal chief and the loser has to leave WWE to maybe go make movies or something. I don't know, then come back a few years later. You know, like what could like it could be anything. And I love the best part of wrestling and you know, a lot of storytelling really is the anticipation, right? The like, what's this going to be? And nobody builds it better than the WWE. Yeah. Like I love what AEW does. They have not found the storytelling footing that WWE has in terms of like how you build the match through outside pieces, like, you know, vignettes and interviews and things like that. They haven't quite got that yet. And I think it's just an experience and a programming thing. But the way that WWE does it is fantastic. Even if it's a terrible match, they can build it into something that at least has stakes. And you're like, all right, I'll check it out. But this sounds cool.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not sure how many tribal combat competitions have taken place in Detroit, but this should be good.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But what you're saying before about like WWE, the difference between WWE and AEW in the way that you were saying is similar to what the difference between WWE and WCW was. And I know some people will cringe at that comparison, but there's a lot to compare there. WWE always was way more polished than WCW was. You just trusted a lot more that there's a reason for everything that you're seeing. Whereas in AEW, sometimes you're just watching a wrestling match, which is fine.
Yeah, and it's probably a pretty good one.
Yeah, that's just not the way the WWE does things, though. It's always like everything is progressing to something else. Whereas I think AEW is just like much more prone to like, well, this would be cool, so let's do that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. Like in some ways, like it makes the AEW shows feel a little bit less predictable, perhaps. But it's just that was a difference between WWE and WCW as well.
Yeah, the ability to pivot on a dime, you know, that serves the AEW style of telling stories, where there's like 3 or 4 main through lines involving your top guys that you can kind of jump in and out of, and then there's like the rest. And the rest is pretty good. But like, you know, there's only so many times you can watch the same 2 guys trade the TNT title before you're like, why are we doing this?
But like, I don't think AEW has ever done anything like what WWE is doing with Roman Reigns and the Bloodline right
Yeah.
now. But in fairness, WWE has rarely done anything this good
Yeah.
ever. So that's kind of like a unfair standard to put. But
Well,
like
yeah,
what
and
WWE has done with Roman Reigns in the last, like since he's come back in this tribal chief thing, like that's some of the best stuff WWE's ever done.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, because it's super authentic and it's super emotional, and
Mhm.
involving the family the way it does, and
Yeah.
people coming into the family, people leaving the family, fractures in the family, and it's there's a lot of WWE storylines that are very like, all right, this week this person's upset at that person, so next week that person's going to come out and cut a promo about this person, challenging them to a match, and then the next week that person's going to respond to the match, and then the next week they'll have a contract signing, and you're just like, oh my god, get to the fireworks factory.
Yeah.
And when you look at AEW's way of doing it, or WCW even there, it's a much smoother, like, in and out. They kind of stop and start, but
Mhm.
that doesn't feel like you're ticking the boxes along the way to it.
Yeah, I'd say that. Well, like in AEW, it sometimes feels like they just kind of like, I was like, oh, we forgot to do something with this storyline for a couple weeks. We'll get back
Yeah.
to it. Like that never happens in WWE. If they stop a storyline, they've stopped it. It's
They've
done.
usually fired the person or they got hurt. So
Yeah, the person got fired.
those are really the big reasons.
The other thing that I think they've done well with Roman Reigns and the Bloodline, and especially so with this feud with the Usos now. Well, I think they've really done a good job of oh boy, we're gonna have to take our halftime break in a little bit, but they've made it so like for ever since Roman Reigns came back, you're asking yourself who's going to be the guy to beat Roman Reigns. And I've been convinced that someone's going to beat Roman Reigns like 3 or 4 times throughout this title reign. I thought Drew McIntyre was going to win at Clash at the Castle. I thought there was a chance Sami Zayn could have beat him in Montreal. And then I thought Cody was going to beat him at WrestleMania. And now we're getting to SummerSlam. I was like, is Jey Uso going to be the guy to beat Roman? I don't think he is.
Is Jey Uso the guy to be like, wow, I'd never even can you imagine considering that 5 years ago?
Yeah.
Like,
But like the Usos, both of them, but especially Jey, but both of them, but especially Jey.
yeah,
Both of them though.
yeah, there's two.
Yeah, Jey though.
Mm.
Like when he was doing the main event Jey Uso stuff, when Jimmy was out hurt, and now, but like he's so good at like promos, but also just like he's had to have conflicted face so often in the last year. Like, oh, I'm loyal to Roman, but my brother and like we've had to. He's told so many stories with his face over the last year. It's very impressive.
Every major moment in Bloodline history has been punctuated by Jey's "I don't know what to do" face.
I'm being driven in 2 different directions, Jey Uso. Oh, I got a warning from my microphone that I was too loud there.
You're peaking.
I just get so riled up with conflicted Jey Uso. I wonder if they'll move into like Roman versus Jimmy. Well, I emphasized the wrong name there because I wonder if they'll put Roman with Jimmy next.
Maybe. Do you know who the true winner is out of all this though? Because Roman and the Usos are established guys. They're made money. Solo Sikoa.
Oh yeah.
Like in NXT for a cup of coffee, and then they were like, hey, wait, you could do this. And
we need you to be a key player in the biggest storyline we've done in a quarter century. You've been practicing for 10 months now. Here you go. But he's done great. So
it's okay. All you got to do is hit people with your thumb. It's fine.
Yeah. Just do an Umaga impression.
I think
that's all you got to do.
Yeah. And he's such a cool aspect of things, right? Because he's so like, he is another one who has great conflicted face.
Yeah, yes, he does. He is like, but his conflicted face is like, I could beat up anybody here if I decided to. I don't know who I'm gonna beat up first.
But I think it's got to be one of these guys.
But he also did in that segment that they did on SmackDown not long ago, where he had to pick up the red lei, and then they were like, okay, Solo, you have to tell, like, you can't just say, I'm thinking about what if I was the tribal chief, but no, I'm gonna give it back to Roman because I'm loyal. Like you had to tell that story with your face, just like Jey Uso had to be conflicted for so long with his face. A lot of wrestling is about faces. And
honestly, it really is.
Yeah.
The best ones have the best faces. Guys like
I'm convinced Hulkamania was like 95% his face.
Yes, it was not his
like
hair.
the way he'd Hulk up and he'd just like
well, look
Ultimate
at guys,
Warrior, another guy, just all face.
Guys like Edge, Cena, these guys with these wild, shocked reactions of just like, and they emoted so much with when Edge came back, his face said everything, all the gratitude, all the pain, all the happiness, the sadness, like everything was right there on his face because he's so expressive. And Solo Sikoa can do that and hit guys in the throat with his thumb real hard.
Who's another guy who's fantastic at telling stories with his face is Cody. I remember the first time I realized that Cody was pretty good was when he was in Legacy. And at first, like when Cody came into WWE and he was like, there's Dusty Rhodes' kid, and here's this like good looking kid with abs. I was like, how the hell is he related to Dusty Rhodes? That shit. But that was my reaction.
Are we thinking the same Dusty Rhodes, or
because you see Dusty Rhodes, then you see Dustin Rhodes, and it's like, here's this
like, I get
guy. That, like, was he in a boy band? Who is this guy? But over time, obviously, like over time, now he's like the most Rhodes of any of them in some ways. But I remember he was in Legacy, and there was some segment going on where it looked like maybe he would turn on Randy Orton, and the crowd started to chant for him to turn on Randy Orton. And he kind of had this look like, can I do it? Can I do it? And then he told the story with his face like, no, I can't turn on Randy. But it was like he took the crowd on like a huge high and then a big low, all with his face. And I thought that guy's good at wrestling.
I
wrestling
knew a guy
is your face
with some kind eyes and wild hair that had similar abilities, crazy ideas. His name was Owen Hart.
Yep. Yeah. Oh my God. I could do 100 podcasts on how awesome Owen Hart is.
His facial expressions were everything.
I always say, like, Owen Hart is like if Bret Hart realized wrestling was ridiculous. Because like Owen was just having a good time, right? Like, like there would be so like he loved playing the over the top cartoonish bumbling heel.
Oh, if Owen could have twirled a mustache and worn a top hat, he would have. Like, he was the best True Blood villain ever.
Oh my God.